Welcome to the Deep Dive. We dig into the sources so you don't have to, pulling out the key insights on really fascinating topics.
And today, we're looking at someone who's a real puzzle in music history.
Todd Rundgren, born back in June '48. An American musician, singer, songwriter, producer. The list just goes on.
It really does. He's this total polymath. Trying to pin him down genre-wise is almost impossible. You've got pop, rock, prog rock, electronic, R&B, psychedelia, even soft rock.
And what's really rare, I think, is being so prominent, so successful as both a recording artist and a top-tier producer. You don't see that combination very often at his level.
Exactly. He's making hits like, Hello, It's Me, but also producing, the New York Dolls. It's a wild range.
So that's our mission today, right? We're diving into the sources to figure out how one guy managed to pioneer in so many different areas, from crafting perfect pop songs to designing computer software and changing how music gets distributed online.
How did he maintain that breadth? What's the core thread running through this incredibly unorthodox career? That's what we want to unpack.
Okay, so let's kick off with the early days. Where did it all start for him?
Well, the mid-'60s, like a lot of guys then. He was in a blues rock group called Woody's Truck Stop first.
Woody's Truck Stop, okay. Doesn't sound very psychedelic.
No, it wasn't. But it was brief. By 1967, he forms this psychedelic band, Nas. And that's where things really start to click for him creatively.
Nas. I opened my eyes. That was them, right?
That's the one. Released in '68, backed with the original version of Hello, It's Me, actually. They got some attention, but maybe not huge success.
But it was important for his development.
Critically important. Sources say this was his real training ground. He wasn't just playing guitar, he was dissecting songwriting, arranging, apparently aiming to match the complexity and artistry of the Beatles. He was really studying it.
That ambition, that need for control, it seems like a theme.
Absolutely, and it led to tensions within Nas. His musical ideas were evolving really fast, maybe faster than the rest of the band, so he leaves.
And jumps straight into a solo career.
Pretty much. He puts out his debut album, Runt, in 1970, and boom, first U.S. top 40 hit right away with We Gotta Get You a Woman.
So solo success comes quickly. But you mentioned the producer side being just as important.
Oh, maybe even more important in terms of enabling his whole career. This is where we see him becoming one of the very first people to be a big deal as both an artist and a producer.
Kind of paving the way for guys like Prince later on.
Exactly. That model of the self-contained genius who can do it all in the studio. For Rundgren, the studio wasn't just a place to record. It was, as some sources put it, his ultimate instrument.
Okay, so how did he get into production so seriously? After leaving Nas?
Right. He leaves Nas, moves to New York in '69, and here's a fascinating little what if, apparently. He's seriously considered becoming a computer programmer.
Wow, okay. Foreshadowing.
Big time. But instead, he takes a job as a staff engineer and producer. And it's under Albert Grossman, the legendary manager for Dylan and the band.
At Bearsville Records, right, Grossman's label.
That's the one. Ampex Bearsville. And Grossman apparently saw the potential immediately, told Rundgren he'd make him the highest paid producer in the world.
Did he?
Eventually, yeah. And this job was key. It gave him instant access to major projects and, crucially, a really good income stream that wasn't tied to his own record sales.
Which buys him freedom later on.
Totally. And the success came fast. He wasn't just engineering local bands. Straight away, he's working with the band on Stage Fright in 1970.
Which was a huge album. Number 5 on Billboard.
Yep. He got tagged Bearsville's Boy Wonder. He clearly had the technical chops right from the start.
And he gets thrown into some tricky situations too, like with Badfinger.
Oh yeah, the Straight Up album in '71, George Harrison was producing it initially.
Right, but then the concert for Bangladesh happened.
Exactly. Harrison had to drop everything for that. So Rundgren gets called in to basically rescue the project and finish the album.
And it was a hit album.
Big hit. But Rundgren later mentioned feeling a bit slighted. He said because of Beatle hubris, he didn't get the producer credit for the big single Day After Day, even though he worked on it.
Interesting. Politics, even then.
Yeah.
But he wasn't just fixing things, he was launching careers, too.
Definitely. He produced the debut album for a band called Half Nelson in 1971.
A Half Nelson. Never heard of them.
Well, you've heard of who they became, Sparks.
Ah, okay. Sparks. Makes sense.
Yeah, and the Mail brothers have always credited Rundgren with basically launching their career with that first record, giving them their sound.
So he's building this incredible production resume. Let's talk about 1973. That year seems massive for him as a producer.
It's honestly kind of staggering. He produces two absolutely huge but completely different seminal albums that year.
Okay, what were they?
First, you've got Grand Funk Railroad's We're an American Band, massive arena rock anthem, the album hit #2, quintessential 70s rock.
Total mainstream success.
And the other one,
Almost immediately after, he produces the debut album by the New York Dolls. Wow. Talk about a contrast. The Dolls' debut is basically proto-punk, right? Raw, aggressive.
exactly. It's considered a foundational record for punk rock. So in the same year, he's behind this huge, polished rock hit and this raw, sleazy, groundbreaking punk precursor.
That's incredible range. Did he get pigeonholed as a punk producer after that?
Strangely, no. He never really became the punk guy despite that album's importance. It just showed he could operate anywhere, musically.
And this production work just kept rolling, culminating in something massive.
Absolutely. The peak, commercially speaking, was probably Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell in 1977.
An absolute monster of an album. So theatrical.
Totally. And that's where Rundgren's technical skill was essential. Jim Steinman's songs were these huge Wagnerian epics. You needed someone who could actually build that sound layer upon layer to get that bombastic operatic feel. Rundgren was the guy.
So we know he was technically brilliant. But what was he like to work with in the studio? What was his style?
Sources often describe him as a songcraft agitator. He wasn't just hitting record. He'd get involved, push bands, challenge their arrangements.
Did he co-write stuff?
Apparently, he often finished or significantly reworked songs for bands. But here's the thing, he'd usually refuse to take a writing credit.
Really? Why?
It seems his main interest was the technical challenge, the sound, the production puzzle, not necessarily the songwriting royalties. He wanted to make the record sound right his way.
That approach must have caused some friction sometimes.
Oh, definitely. The most famous example is probably XTC's Skylarking album from 1986.
Ah, yes, the legendary Difficult Sessions.
Absolutely notorious. Andy Partridge from XTC and Rundgren apparently clashed constantly. Arguments about songs, sounds, direction, everything.
You'd think the album would sound like a mess then.
But it's the total opposite. Skylarking is widely seen as maybe the best album XTC ever made and one of Rundgren's finest production jobs.
How does that work?
It's that agitator thing, maybe? Channeling the tension into creativity? Rundgren himself admitted it was tough, but he also said something like, the finished record sounds like they were all having a great time, which is ironic.
So this demanding style comes up elsewhere too.
Yeah, you hear echoes of it. Greg Graffin from Bad Religion worked with him later and called him very honest and challenging. Said Rundgren pushed them. It sounds like he demanded a certain level of rigor.
But not everyone loved it. There are conflicting stories, right?
Exactly. You get the other side, too. Ev Olcutt from the band 12 Rods had a completely different take. He claimed Rundgren basically just hit record and then did crossword puzzles while they played.
Huh. Genius or aloof puzzle master?
Maybe a bit of both. It paints a picture of someone intensely focused, maybe not on the hand-holding aspect, but on the technical result. And remember, he later self-diagnosed with ADD, which might shed some light on that kind of hyper-focus mixed with seeming detachment.
Okay, so this production success, the money, the reputation, that's the engine.
It's the absolute T. It gave him what almost no other artist had, the financial independence to do whatever the hell he wanted with his own music.
He didn't need his solo albums to sell millions.
Precisely. He could afford to be weird, experimental, difficult, because the production work paid the bills. He essentially bought his artistic freedom.
Which brings us nicely into his solo work during that Bearsville era, roughly 1970 to 1984. This is where he really stretches out.
Yeah, this is where he uses that freedom. But interestingly, the peak of his accessible pop craft comes quite early in this period. The double album, Something Anything, in 1972.
Right, the one with the big hits. Tell us about making that record. It sounds intense.
The stories are wild. Apparently, he was experimenting with Ritalin to stay focused for these marathon, 12-hour recording sessions.
Ritalin.
Yeah, balanced with marijuana use, according to the sources. And he basically turned his living room into a studio with an 8-track recorder and synth, just locked himself away.
And he played almost everything himself.
On about 3 sides of the double album, yeah. Bass, drums, guitar, keys, vocals. Pretty much a one-man band, a real statement of self-sufficiency.
And it worked commercially, big time.
Oh, yeah. It had I Saw the Light, which was a decent hit, number 16. And then the re-recorded version of Hello, It's Me became massive, hit number 5 in 1973.
But the album's influence goes beyond just those hits, doesn't it? Especially for power pop.
Hugely important for power pop. Tracks like Couldn't I Just Tell You? Critics still point to that as like a perfect example of the genre. Some call it one of the greatest power pop songs ever recorded. It's got that blend of melody, energy hooks.
And the album itself was kind of quirky, wasn't it? Not just pop songs.
Right. It's a double LP, so there's room for everything. Straight pop hits sit alongside these long jams, weird studio experiments, even jokes like the sounds of the studio game where he challenges listeners to find mistakes.
Like pops and crackles.
Yeah, hiss, bad edits. It was very meta, very Rundgren. The whole thing felt personal, idiosyncratic, and it was hugely successful. Went gold, Rolling Stone ranked it high on their greatest albums list. He was basically crowned the new king of sophisticated pop.
The male Carol King, as some called him.
Exactly. And he hated it.
Hated the success.
Hated the label. He felt being called the male Carol King was limiting. He apparently saw that kind of successful melodic songwriting he'd just mastered as being, in his own words, formulaic and born from laziness.
Wow. So he conquers the pop world and immediately wants to tear it down.
Pretty much. He had the producer money, remember? So he didn't need to keep making something anything. He decided to deliberately sabotage that image.
And the result was a wizard, a true star, in 1973.
The ultimate pivot. He wanted the follow-up to be more eclectic and more experimental, a complete rejection of the pop formula.
And this is where the extracurricular activities come in.
Yeah, the sound and structure of Wizard were, by his own admission, heavily influenced by his experiments with psychedelic drugs, mescaline, psilocybin, mushrooms.
So he was trying to translate that experience into music.
That seems to be the idea. He didn't see it as songs, but as a flight plan. It starts chaotic, dense, disorienting, then gradually finds its way to these more melodic, soulful pieces at the end. He literally said he wanted to imprint the chaos in his head onto a record.
That sounds like commercial suicide after, hello, it's me.
He knew it. He called Wizard his act of tyranny after having achieved commercial success. He was deliberately challenging, even alienating the audience he'd just built.
And did it work? Did he alienate them?
Reports say he lost about half his audience right there. But crucially, this move established the pattern for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
Artistic exploration first, commercial concerns a distant second.
The timing was pretty stark too, right? Wizard comes out just as hello, it's me is climbing the charts.
Exactly. So the public image is this sensitive ballad guy, and the new album is this sprawling, psychedelic, sometimes difficult head trip. It couldn't have been a starker contrast.
But Wizard has had a long life, hasn't it? Influential.
Massively influential, especially on later generations of home recording artists, the bedroom auteurs. It's seen as this landmark of artistic freedom and studio experimentation. Mojo magazine even called it the greatest album of all time back in 2003.
So after Wizard, where does he go next? He's blown up the pop star thing.
He dives deeper into complexity, forms the band Utopia in 1973.
Okay, Utopia. What was their initial sound?
Pure progressive rock initially. Really complex stuff, lots of intricate playing. Sources point to influences like Frank Zappa, Mahavishnu Orchestra, serious musicianship.
Their first album was Todd Rundgren's Utopia in '74.
Yep, that was his full plunge into prog. But it wasn't just musical complexity he was exploring. His solo album from the same year, Todd.
Another double album, right?
Yeah. That one really leaned into the spiritual and philosophical side, drawing on the psychedelic experiences, but also his reading.
What was he reading?
He got heavily into stuff like Theosophy Madame Blavatsky and thinkers like Jiddu Krishnamurti, Rudolf Steiner, exploring mysticism, esoteric ideas.
Trying to put that into music. Sounds ambitious.
Extremely. This phase peaked with the 1975 album Initiation. One whole side is taken up by a single piece called A Treatise on Cosmic Fire.
How long of that?
Over 35 minutes long.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely not I Saw the Light.
Not even close. It shows how far he was willing to push things. But then, just to keep everyone guessing, he pivots again.
Back towards accessibility.
Sort of. In 1978, he releases Hermit of Mink Hollow. This came after a period of personal upheaval, separating from his girlfriend at the time, Bebe Buell.
So a more personal, stripped-down record.
Exactly. He made it mostly by himself again, focusing on more direct melodic songs he could play on piano or guitar. A conscious return to more straightforward songwriting.
And did that connect commercially?
It did. It had the single Can We Still Be Friends, which became another decent hit for him, reaching number 29.
That song's been covered a lot, hasn't it?
Loads. Robert Palmer had a big hit with it. Rod Stewart covered it. It's probably his most covered song. Proves that pop sensibility was always there, even when he chose to bury it under layers of prog or psychedelia.
So he can turn the pop tap back on when he wants to.
Seems like it. Which leads us into maybe the most surprising dimension of his career, the technological pioneering.
Right, section 3. This is where wizard takes on a whole new meaning. He wasn't just using studio tech, he was creating new tech.
He really was way ahead of the curve, especially in visuals and computing. Back in 1978, think about that. He organized what's considered the first interactive television concert.
Interactive how? In 1978.
Details are a bit sketchy, but it involved audience participation via broadcast, very rudimentary by today's standards, but conceptually groundbreaking. Then, think about MTV launching in 1981.
His video was one of the first ones shown.
Yep. The video for Time Heals from his Healing album, right there on day one, among the very first batch of videos MTV ever aired. He understood the visual medium early.
But the computer stuff is even more mind-blowing for the time.
It really is. In 1981, he develops one of the very first computer paint programs. It was called the Utopia Graphics System.
And this was running on what? Not a Mac or PC?
An Apple II. This is years before user-friendly graphics software became common. He was building the tools himself because they didn't exist yet.
That's incredible. He's a rock star coding graphics programs in the early 80s.
And he stayed on that edge. Later, he was a huge early champion of the new tech video toaster.
Ah, the video toaster. That was huge for desktop video later on.
Massive. And Rundgren wasn't just using it, he was pushing its limits. He made the video for his song Change Myself using the poster, and it was so advanced, so innovative, that Newtek actually used it as an official demo reel to sell the system.
So he's literally showcasing the future of video production.
Pretty much. He also co-developed stuff like the Flow Phaser screensaver,
Yeah.
always tinkering with computer-generated visuals.
Okay, so he's deep into graphics and video tech. How does that connect back to the music side besides videos?
This is where it gets really visionary. He starts applying these interactive and digital ideas to music distribution and format. In 1993, he releases an album under the name TRI.
TRI.
Todd Rundgren Interactive. The album was called No World Order.
And it wasn't just a normal CD?
Not at all. It was designed for the Philips CDI platform, which was this early multimedia player. The album was actually hundreds of tiny musical loops and snippets.
Snippets, so you didn't just listen?
No. You, the listener, could combine these snippets, change the tempo, the mood, the style, basically construct your own version of the song or the album. He provided some pre-made mixes, but the core idea was interactivity. You became a collaborator.
That sounds way ahead of its time, like remix culture before remix culture.
Exactly. Decades before things like GarageBand or interactive music apps became common, he was already thinking about music not as a fixed object, but as raw material for the listener to play with.
Okay, that's conceptually wild. But then he took it even further with distribution, right? Cutting out the labels.
Oh, yeah. This was maybe his most radical move. In the late 1990s, way before this was standard practice, he and his manager launched something called Patronet.
Patronet. Like patronage.
Precisely. It was a subscription service. Fans would pay directly to get access to his new music, works in progress, unreleased stuff, direct from him.
Cutting out the record company completely.
Totally. This was years before Kickstarter, Patreon, Bandcamp. He was pioneering the direct-to-fan model using the internet when most labels were still trying to figure out websites.
Again, only possible because he had that independent producer income.
Absolutely. He didn't need the label advance or distribution network anymore. He just bypassed the whole system. And he still does it today, offering music directly to subscribers through his website. He basically saw the writing on the wall for the old industry model way early.
Okay, before we get into the personal side and recognition, let's quickly touch on the music that came after that main Bearsville run.
Right. His last album for Bairdville was the ever-popular Tortured Artist Effect in 1982. And that had a song that became unexpectedly huge later on.
Bang the Drum All Day.
That's the one. It was only a minor chart hit when it came out, sort of ended his relationship with the label on a quiet note. But then...
Sports arenas, commercials.
Exactly. It became this ubiquitous anthem, especially at Green Bay Packers games, apparently, and in Carnival Cruise ads. It ended up being one of his most famous and probably most lucrative songs just through licensing years later.
Yeah.
Funny how that happens.
His experimental side didn't stop either, did it?
Yeah.
The a cappella album.
Right, 1985. An entire album made using only his voice. Multi-tracked harmonies, but also programmed vocal samples, creating all the instrumental sounds. just voices.
That sounds incredibly difficult to arrange.
Hugely complex, and interestingly, years later, critics pointed to it as a clear precedent for albums like Björk's Medulla, which famously used only vocal sounds. Rundgren was exploring that territory almost 20 years earlier.
And then he returned to more traditional sounds later.
Yeah, in the late 80s, early 90s, albums like Nearly Human and Second Wind saw him circle back to his Philly soul roots. But even then, there was a twist.
How so?
He recorded them live in the studio, the whole band playing together in single takes, trying to capture that live energy. Second Wind was even recorded in front of a studio audience who were instructed to be completely silent.
Capturing the performance, but not the applause. Always experimenting with the process.
Always. Which brings us to the final section, the connections, the personal stories, the recognition, or lack thereof, for a while.
There were some feuds along the way,
Yeah.
right? The John Lennon one is pretty famous.
Yeah, a brief but very public spat back in 1974. Rundgren gave an interview to Melody Maker, accused Lennon of hitting a waitress, and called him a fucking idiot for his revolutionary posturing.
Ouch. How did Lennon respond?
With typical Lennon-esque wit and venom, he publicly referred to Rundgren as Turd Rundgren.
Classy. Did they patch it up?
Apparently they agreed to drop it later, but the story takes a really disturbing turn years later, connecting Rundgren to Lennon's death.
How so? This is the Mark David Chapman connection.
Yeah. Rundgren himself didn't know this until much later, but Chapman, the man who killed Lennon, was apparently an obsessive Todd Rundgren fan.
Seriously?
When Chapman was arrested outside the Dakota in 1980, reports say he was wearing a promotional t-shirt for Rundgren's album Hermit of Mink Hollow.
That's chilling.
And he supposedly had a copy of Rundgren's biography, The Ballad of Todd Rundgren, with him too.
Mm-hmm.
It's this incredibly strange, dark coincidence linking him to the tragedy, especially given their earlier public feud.
Wow. That's heavy. Shifting gears to something less tragic, but still complicated his personal life, particularly the connection to Liv Tyler.
Right, the Bebe Buell relationship. They were together in the early mid-70s.
And during a break, Buell had a relationship with Steven Tyler.
Correct,
Yeah.
which resulted in the birth of Liv Tyler in 1977. But initially, Bebe Buell told everyone, including Todd, that he was the father.
And he stepped up.
Completely. He signed the birth certificate, committed to raising Liv as his daughter. He knew there might be uncertainty, but he chose to be her father.
Even though he wasn't biologically.
Right. Liv found out Steven Tyler was her biological father when she was about 11, but the bond with Rundgren was already solidified.
And they're still close today.
Incredibly close. Liv has always emphasized that Rundgren is her father in the ways that matter. She talks about how he feels like daddy. It's a really powerful story about chosen family and commitment.
That says a lot about him. Did he have other children?
Yes, he has 2 sons, Rex and Randy, from a long relationship with Karen Darvin, and then later, with his wife, Michelle Gray, he has a son named Rebop and an adopted son, Keone. Seems like fatherhood was important to him.
Okay, let's talk recognition. We mentioned the ADD self-diagnosis, which maybe explains some of the relentless energy.
Yeah, that drive to constantly learn and create across different fields makes a certain kind of sense in that context.
But the big one, the elephant in the room for decades, was
Yeah.
a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah. He was eligible way back in 1995, but for years, nothing. And Todd himself wasn't exactly lobbying for it.
He was pretty outspoken against it, wasn't he?
Very. He called the whole process corrupt, basically dismissed the institution as meaningless, part of the commercial machine he'd always rebelled against. He made it crystal clear he did not care one bit about being inducted.
Classic Rundgren. So what happened?
The ultimate irony, they finally inducted him in 2021.
And did he go?
Of course not. He refused to attend the ceremony. Stayed true to his principles, or maybe just his contrarian nature, right to the end. It was the perfect Rundgren ending to that whole saga.
Even without the Hall of Fame for a long time, he did get other honors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially for the tech stuff.
Definitely. He got a Grammy nomination way back in '84 for Best Music Video, which acknowledged his visual pioneering. He received Lifetime Achievement Awards, honorary doctorates from places like Berkeley and DePauw University. Those kinds of academic and technical recognitions seemed more his speed.
So wrapping this all up, how do we synthesize this incredibly varied, complex career?
I think the defining word is maverick. His entire career feels like a deliberate refusal to follow the expected path. He could have been a massive, consistent pop star. He could have just been a hugely successful producer.
But he wouldn't settle.
Never. He used the security from one field production to fund his deliberate experimentation and, frankly, commercial risks in another, his solo work and his tech ventures. That producer income was the rare luxury, as one source put it, that allowed him to prioritize freedom.
It's just wild to think the same person made Hello, It's Me, produced Bat Out of Hell, and designed an early computer paint program and pioneered interactive music.
It's that refusal to be categorized. Stephen Thomas Erlewine nailed it when he called Rundgren a rock and roll maverick who consciously chose to abandon easy stardom to explore uncharted musical territory.
So what's the final thought we leave our listeners with? What's the core driver behind all this relentless innovation and genre hopping?
Well, Rundgren himself gave a clue once. He said something profound about his ultimate goal.
What was that?
He said that if he could achieve just 1 minute of total illumination, then he wouldn't care if his whole career went down the drain, because he'd know there was an answer to everything, to existence, to death.
Wow, that's a heavy motivation.
It reframes everything, doesn't it? Maybe all the music, the production, the technology, the constant searching. Maybe it wasn't just about art or innovation for its own sake.
Maybe it was all part of that deeper search for that 1 minute of illumination.
Could be. Maybe that pursuit of ultimate truth, spiritual or artistic, is what made him constantly push boundaries, sacrifice easy success, and become this true wizard, always chasing the next unknown, seeking that elusive answer, something to think about.